Well, welcome everybody. My name is Tana Atchley Culbertson. I'm one of the co-directors for the Willamette River Network, and we're so excited to have you here with us for our open house. Um, Jesse and I have been really excited to have this time with everybody. We're going to not be super duper formal, but we do have a little bit of a presentation and some special guests with our board members here, and some fun prizes and stuff to give out. And we just want to make this fun and informal and just an opportunity to get to know all of you. It's been kind of fun watching you as you come into the room with your fun backgrounds or your puppies and everything. So welcome. I'll let Jesse say hello.
We're just so glad you're here. We do wish we had a physical office location and space and that we were all together having some sort of beverage and light fare together to discuss the really important work that continues to remain in front of all of us, bringing all of us closer and closer to a healthy Willamette River system and all that entails. So thank you for joining us today at our open house, and we have some exciting announcements to share with you. We've been working tremendously hard with our board for the last 14 months, and you're going to see some of the fruit of our work today. So Tana is going to explain our work. Here we are.
So I've got a little bit of a slideshow here. The first one is just to tell you what we're going to do. We've got a short presentation, and then we'll have our board members share some remarks with you about the work that they've been up to. We've got some raffle prizes, and then we'll just have an informal networking Q&A session. We'll be on until 12:30, but we may end before that. So feel free to come and go as your time schedule allows. Firstly, we would like to do a land and labor acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the Willamette River runs through the ancestral homelands, traditional village sites, and gathering areas of the Cayuse, Chinook, Clackamas, Cowlitz, Kalapuya, Cathlamet, Molalla, Multnomah, Numu, Tualatin, Wasco, Wishram, Willamette, Tumwater, and other tribes and bands of the Willamette Rivers. We want to recognize that the Willamette Valley today is a region of many diverse Native peoples who continue to live and work here. We respectfully acknowledge and honor all Indigenous communities, past, present, future, and are grateful for their ongoing and vibrant presence. We honor the many nations of the Willamette for being the original caretakers and protectors of these lands since time immemorial, and for passing on their teachings and lifeways through past and present generations. The Willamette River Network commits to educating ourselves and our peers on the accurate and authentic experiences of tribal peoples in Oregon, and we commit to continued learning and action in our communities. To follow our acknowledgement with action, we will continue to use our resources to prioritize partnerships with Indigenous tribes, tribal governments, and intertribal organizations. We also have a labor acknowledgement that has been inspired by the National Education Association's Black Caucus. So I want to give credit to the work that they have done. We pay homage to those stolen from Africa, placed in chattel bondage, forced into labor, and called slaves. They never submitted to this oppression and have always fought together with an unbroken connection to the divine and to each other. We honor our African ancestors for their forced and unpaid labor that built much of the Americas. To all our Indigenous, Asian, and African forebearers, we commit to the continued struggle for liberation and reparations, for it is through this injustice that we truly give honor. With that, I'd like to tell a little bit of a story about how we got to where we are. Back in 2008, Meyer Memorial Trust began investing in a basin-wide movement to improve the Willamette River. And they did that by investing in restoration work from the headwaters in Eugene, and went up into Oregon City up until around 2015. Around that time, Meyer began a new funding priority to center equity work, and the Willamette River Initiative began to include that priority in its work with partners. As time went on, they knew that this Willamette River Initiative was a 10-year long investment. They began preparing for that, and they started a blueprint phase with partners to imagine how their work would continue to evolve after the WRI sunset. So they began a building phase to create the Willamette River Initiative. Back in 2019, the board was established and staff began to be hired. So that was me. Back in 2020, we hired Jesse. Our board created structure, and we started doing some work on some branding. So that brings us to our present day. You might see this logo and image in the upper right-hand corner that says Nesika Wilamut, where people and rivers meet. And that is kind of our big reveal. We have a new name, and we are created to help make an equitable river movement that weaves people together and communities who care about human and ecological well-being in the Willamette River Basin. So I'm going to go into a little bit of a story around our name and brand. We partnered with a lot of our stakeholders up and down the river to create this design. And we hope that it is something that resonates with you, and you'll be able to recognize and hear as we continue with our work. I know that the name might be a little bit different for people to see initially. So I wanted to just practice with all of you how to say our name. Nesika, you can see that Nesika, and then Wilamut. So it's like wheel, like a tire, Wilamut. And it translates to our Willamette in Chinook Wawa. And so Chinook Wawa is a trade language that has been used in the Pacific Northwest for a very long time. It started off as a pidgin language, which was used to just communicate with people for trade. And it's kind of evolved into more of a Creole, which is a language that becomes like a primary language for certain communities. And so you can see that it's been infused with languages that are tribal, as well as traders who were also in the area. I also believe there may be some Hawaiian words mixed in as well, because we did have people come over at different points along the Columbia. And it's still spoken and studied today. It is the official tribal language of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. If you are in the upper Willamette, you can actually get college credit at Lane Community College. And if you are a high school student down in Willamina, you can actually fulfill your second language requirement there. But it's also used in many place names in the Willamette Valley and the Northwest. So as you're driving along I-5 and you're coming across cities and counties, a lot of those names come from Chinook Wawa. So we're just happy to have our organization's name reflect that history and just the beauty of so many different people coming together. So I wanted to go through a little bit of who we are. Who is Nesika Wilamut? So we are an evolving community-driven network, and we want to weave together people and communities that care about human and ecological well-being in the entire Willamette River Basin. So from down in Eugene all the way through to where the Willamette meets the Columbia up by Portland. Our mission is to create connections, build community, share and leverage resources, and build the capacity of people and organizations to protect and restore the river and its communities. Our vision is that together we can shape solutions to heal and care for our river basin and communities for current and future generations. And this slide here is a little bit detailed, so I won't go through and read every section of it, but these are our values. So this is what we stand for, what motivates our work and guides our decisions. We want to be basin-wide and community grounded, so we want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody from the upper, middle, or lower Willamette out of our conversations. We want to be reciprocal in our work and make sure that we're building relationships that that sustain us, so that we're recognizing that we're interconnected, but that we're accountable to one another, that we're centering justice and equity and inclusion of all of the communities that encompass the Willamette Basin in our work. We are also focused on the health and healing of people, communities, and the river. We recognize that if the river is not healthy, that our communities can't be healthy, because a sick river system will make the people sick. We're also focused on equity work and making sure that everybody in our community has access to the resources that the river provides. And then we are also really invested in sharing and leveraging resources. So we really want to make sure that we are listening to the needs of our community and that we're responding to that in the ways that we can. We know that the initiative was able to provide a lot of resources to our community, and we want to be able to continue that work, but it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get to that space. But in the meantime, we are definitely invested in continuing creating of community.
One of the aspects of this brand that we're really excited about is how it speaks to our main purpose. Our reason for existence as Nesika Wilamut is to build a network. Right here we have pictured a flotilla of kayaks on the river, and I would assume they're floating downriver with some degree of collaboration, though this looks rather convoluted. We certainly consider ourselves as coordinators, Tana and myself, the board, but coordinators with all of you. And when we think of a network, I like to think of a brain and how one neuron communicates with another neuron to coordinate actions through a synaptic connection. And the more those particular neurons communicate across that synaptic connection, the better actions are taken, more coordinated, more strategic. And so the more regular communication between these particular nodes or these neurons, the more often they will be able to understand one another and move forward. And so we very much feel that way, that our main reason for being is to communicate with all of you, for all of you to communicate with all of us, to build trust across the network so that we can accelerate the rate of information, align our efforts, and coordinate our actions. As a network, we have 2 staff currently, Tana and myself, and 5 board members. Our 2 co-chairs are Gabe Shuships and Clinton Begley, who you'll hear from in a moment. And you may also hear from some other board members on the call with us today, Michael Pope, Keta Gonzalez, and Nabeen Demal. We're so thankful for the way they have helped us think through this rebrand, because as we think about the Chinook Wawa language and how this language was co-created between colonizers and settlers and those who are indigenous and native to these lands, the language was used to coordinate actions, to communicate, to trade, to improve and work together. And we hope that we'll also bring that spirit to our work, that we want to communicate across difference, but we want to use shared language. We want to express shared values, and we want to engage in reciprocity in relationships with those who are working to advance a healthier Willamette River system. These are some of the organizations we work with in our network: watershed councils, land trusts, SWCDs. We're working with the regenerative agriculture community, farmers, private landowners, land trusts, which was mentioned, community-based organizations, individuals, and philanthropic foundations, local, state, and federal agencies, as well as sovereign tribes, municipalities, drinking water providers, cities, colleges, and universities. And we believe that all of these actors together, when they are communicating and convening and meeting in formal and informal ways, they will discover innovative and strategic ways to advance this work that they wouldn't have discovered if they weren't connecting, talking, building trust, and convening. And so really that's our main goal as a network. We have formal convenings, which we'll be discussing in a bit, but we also have, in the future, when things are opened up, we hope to facilitate informal meetings in regional locales of the Willamette Basin. Our main goals: we are advancing environmental justice and equity in Oregon. We're hoping that part of that is acknowledging what's going on in the scientific and academic community, which is very much aimed at bridging the divide and bridging the gap between Western science and traditional ecological knowledge. One of my favorite historians is John Christensen at UCLA, and he's very much involved in this bridging work. Comes from a traditional Western science, humanities approach to academia, but is starting to recognize that TEK will actually help us steward these lands more effectively than Western science, perhaps. So this is a fun time to be alive, and we exist to elevate and amplify that conversation. We also, when we say where people and rivers meet, we're starting to see the evidence that there's an increasing recognition of the interdependency between human health and environmental health, as well as environmental toxicity and negative outcomes for human health. And so we want to try to advance both at the same time with more partners in the network. This does not mean we're not going to continue to advance our traditional work with aquatic habitat, water quality, riparian buffer, floodplain restoration, and advancing the Willamette 2050 conservation vision adduced by Dave Holz and Stan Gregory with the Pacific Northwest Ecosystem Research Consortium. But it also means we're hoping with those exact thinkers to advance public health as well. I was actually just listening to a podcast last night about how researchers at the University of Washington are beginning to find oxycodone in mussels in the Puget Sound. So it's just bizarre to think how, some of the pharmaceutical medications that we all know have really challenging effects on human health are also now affecting the environment in negative ways. And researchers at the UW have recently shown that. So the interdependency, I think, of the environment and human health is coming to the fore as well in public consciousness, and this is exciting. We also exist to support healthy climate. So we hope that in our work, we will be able to show that carbon sequestration through healthier rivers, cooler waters, as well as floodplain restoration is a good that we're advancing in the wake of a warming climate. One of the ways we convene people is through our programming, which some of you have seen this year. At the beginning of the year, we hosted an event on conservation finance, and many of you have responded quite well to that, and we have begun to find and discover some opportunities with the World Resources Institute, both in the Upper Willamette and perhaps also, we've recently learned, in the Mid Willamette as well. So more to come on that, but very exciting. We also began a conversation with a number of leaders in the outdoor recreation space who are looking to advance equitable outdoor access while also advancing environmental health and environmental justice. And the Environmental Equity Committee of Governor Brown's Racial Justice Council participated in this event with us, but it has catalyzed more conversation and some policy that's going to be impacting the state of Oregon in really good ways. So we're excited about that. And we had a follow-up to the conservation finance. So there was a lot of stimulated conversation at the follow-up we were excited about. And here we are today at our open house. And this is really why we exist. So we're glad you've been here. We're glad you're participating in the conversation, because your wisdom, your expertise, your knowledge area, as you bring it to the network, you help us think better. You accelerate the rate of information to all of our partners. And we discover common work that we might not have discovered if we weren't communicating. One example of that is I just was on a call three days ago with someone who's working on a FEMA application in Eugene, and they didn't know that someone else near them was also working on a FEMA application. And so now they're meeting. We kind of discovered that as we were all talking, and now they're meeting to maybe make the FEMA application a little bit bigger of an ask and a little bit more relevant, which is exactly the reason for a network existing, is to help people know what each other are doing and to align efforts. We would love if you would save the date for our annual Within Our Reach conference. Due to its uncertainty as to whether we would be able to be in person, we have decided at this time to go digital. And I'm going to have Tana explain a little bit about the format of our Within Our Reach conference this fall.
So rather than ask you to give up 2 full days and sit in your chair and enjoy from your Zoom, we're going to scale back, and we're going to ask you to join us for 2 hours each day of the week. So that way you'll be able to get up and stretch, and you won't necessarily have to sit through sessions for 2 days straight. So we'll be having more details come out about Within Our Reach in the near future. And also, if you're interested in helping with the planning committee, feel free to get in touch with me, because we're going to be getting started with securing our speakers and activities and stuff soon. So the last part of our formal presentation is just how to stay in touch with us. If you have a mobile device, you can scan, take a picture of our link tree, and that will take you to a site that will connect you to all of our events, our website, and our social media accounts. You can also use that link to do that. We are in kind of that between phase of rolling out our official name and changing over from the Willamette River Network to Nesika Wilamut. So everything right now still says Willamette River Network. So if you email us or go to our website or our Facebook or our LinkedIn, all of that will still be Willamette River Network, and we'll be changing that over in the next few weeks when we roll out our new website. But other ways that you can connect with the network is to sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, and you can do that on our website. Right at the bottom, if you scroll, there's a way for you to sign up. We have a LinkedIn page and a Facebook page. We will have an Instagram page coming soon. Also check our website. That's where you can find recordings of the events that have taken place so far. We'll also have a recording of this open house available on there. And then just attending our programming. So we'll be having network convenings, we'll be hosting virtual workshops, and then we'll also be hosting the Within Our Reach conference. This is an easy way to get in touch with either Jesse or myself. You can, if you can't remember Tana or Jesse, you can always do info@Willamette River Network. And that will get you in touch with us. And then I've also listed our phone numbers as well. So that is the end of the formal presentation time. But I would like to give space to our board members who've joined us today. I'd like to recognize Clinton Bagley, who's one of our co-chairs, Michael Pope, and Nabeen Damal. I think, where did he go? And Keta Gonzalez is here. I saw Nabeen. I don't see him now. Oh, no, there he is. Okay, these little blocks. It's hard to find everybody. Okay, so they are all here. If you would like to just say hello, share a little bit about what you've been doing with the board, I'll just yield the floor to you right now, and I'm going to be adding people's names to a wheel so that we can do a raffle.
Well, thank you, Tana. I'm happy to say hello. I know many of you and many names are new to me, and I look forward to connecting with you. I think over the last period of months since I've been on the board, I've been really excited and challenged by a lot of these critical conversations around how do we move from sort of the hub of the WRI, the hub approach of the WRI, to a network approach. And I like to think about sort of what was the unnamed network, or what is the unnamed network, and what are the connections, the synapses, to use Jesse's analogy of the brain, that already exist, and how can our network not have a top-down sort of board-driven, staff-driven approach, but rather facilitate connections between and across this unnamed network, and give it a name, give it an identity, give it a vision that folks can have some gravity around, and really direct resources outward and across the network. And I think there's been some challenges there. How do we get started and think about that differently, and particularly the resource constraints and the uncertainty around that? And especially, how do we center equity in this and acknowledge the desire and opportunity that comes from a more inclusive network, while honoring the work that's been done before and the connections that have existed long before that. And so I think that there's been some challenges, but some really exciting opportunities for us to move forward. It's taken a lot more time than I thought it would, to be honest, but that's where we are, and then the time was necessary. And so it's been really enriching, and I can't say it any better than Jesse and Tana have about what amazing things lie on the horizon for us, I think. So thank you for being here. I look forward to connecting more with you all, and look forward to hearing from our other board members as well. And Jesse, you need a new picture of me, or I need to get a haircut.
No, I think your beard wins the day. I mean, I've been up and down the Willamette a lot the last bit, meeting with people socially distanced. It's the best beard I've seen in the Willamette Basin, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't think so. I'm always looking. You know, I'll let you know if I find a better one, but yours is top notch right now.
Clinton said he wasn't going to trim it until the Willamette River was clean. All the communities were equitable.
We're almost.
Well, Michael Pope, should I kick it over to you? You were one of the co-chairs when I first came on, and I just always appreciated your kind of vision and awareness of the long scope of this work. I ended up meeting Tom Conklin at some point. He was also talking about kind of the improvement on the Willamette over the last half century. And I think people in the younger generation, we often don't know that. You know, we kind of see and we feel this eco-anxiety around a warming climate, and we see some of the degradation to the river or the point or non-point source pollution. And, you know, sometimes we feel like, are we making any progress? But I think it's always nice to talk with people who've been in this work much longer, because they know we're making progress. They know we're getting closer and closer to a healthier Willamette River system. So, Michael, I always appreciated the critical and generous nature you brought to the board when you were discussing this. So,
thanks, Jesse, and welcome everybody. And I'm still a juvenile compared to Ken Beerley, I see, and David Holtz, and perhaps a few others that I see little squares of. Who would believe a year or two ago that we'd be looking at little squares all year long of each other? But again, welcome to this wonderful emerging network. It's been as Clinton mentioned, it's been a great privilege to be participating in some really incredible conversations over the last couple of years, and even prior to that. about what this network could potentially look like. And I'm really happy that we have staff now, and Jesse and Tana have done some amazing work just in the time they've been with the network. So we're really looking forward to the future. One thing that I reflect back on, and I had a great privilege to actually go to one of the restoration sites that was funded through the Willamette Restoration Initiative and partially through OEB and BPA. We were on the site with Tana and some folks from Greenbelt Land Trust, and the trees that were planted 7 or 8 years ago were almost 30 feet in height right now. And the prairies are all full of native grasses, and there were western pond turtles and birds everywhere. And I begin to think that the river really has some great hope when you go to sites like that. And the really wonderful reaches of the river where you actually can cast your mind back to 170 or so years ago and think about what the river must have looked like before we started meddling with it and did the things that we've done to it. So I really look forward to seeing where the network is going. And I think with the model and the values and the participation of a broad range of people across the Willamette Basin, we're just going to see some really wonderful things in the future. So thank you. Thank you, Jesse, for the kind comments.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Nabin Timal. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm one of the board members with Willamette Network here. I think the most exciting and rewarding aspect of this experience has been truly envisioning and cultivating a holistic network that really embodies a decolonization and community-driven and with equity-centered approach. Being the youngest person on the board, it's been a great learning experience. Everybody has been so wonderful. I represent myself, I'm a refugee and immigrant. And I think one of the true reason why I joined this board and this work is to really do the environmental justice work. And I really hope in near future, we'll be able to, work with community partners and also engage with folks that have not been really engaged historically, especially refugee and immigrants community, to do the environmental justice work that is, community driven, that is equity centered. Yeah, and thank you so much for being here. It's great to see, and we hope to connect and work together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabin. Nabin brings a great connection to so many people in Portland, professors at Portland State University, where he did his master's degree. And we're just so thankful to have him involved in the network and have his vision for how we can be including communities of color in this work. It's so important as we advance environmental justice to bring everyone up. No one should be left behind. Everyone has a human right to clean water, to healthy air, to resilient forests, to an environment that thrives and flourishes, not to an environment that's polluted. No one deserves that. So we're excited about the way in which communities that have inordinate amounts of capital can use those dollars to lift everyone up while also lifting up the environment. And is Keta on the call as well, I believe? She's camping, but she is so generous to have decided to call in, and maybe she can tell us where she's at currently, if she can hear my voice, but perhaps her connection is a bit. Keta, are you there? Welcome to our open house, digitally. Her connection might be a little bit slow. Well, Keta, if you can hear us, you are welcome to pipe in and interrupt. This is an open house, and we're glad you're here. So,
can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I had to remember the *6 thing. Yes, thanks. Thanks, Jesse. And hello, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not able to get at least little square box videos of you all, but the bandwidth here is not quite up to speed for that. My name is Keta Gonzalez, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm all American, South American and North American, Venezolana, Mestiza, Yanomamo, Guajiro, the people of the water. And I am truly that. I decided to come and move my office to the banks of the Deschutes River this week, to be by the water that so inspires me. I am a river person, and for me, I think the river teaches me right livelihood. It reminds me, as water does, to move forward in the path that is true. And when I reach those obstacles, to move around them, and with my friends, slowly wear them down where they need to be worn down. And it's an honor and privilege to be on this board and working with all of you in a concerted effort to make the Willamette River Basin a much more equitable, environmentally just basin. And to know, the other thing is that, water connects us all, and the work doesn't just stop on the Willamette or in the basin, but it carries on. And we have so many reminders now of how interconnected this world is. Yeah. And the work that we're doing doesn't stop here. And the work rooted in a network, in a collective, in a shared vision, in our uniqueness, our similarities, our strengths, and our learning to transform the world we live in. So it's an honor to be a part of that and to learn with and from you. And yeah, it's good to be here. So thank you all.
Thank you, Tessa.
Jesse and I are really fortunate to have such an amazing board to work with. We have another board member, Gabe Shioships, who's one of our co-chairs, who isn't able to join us this afternoon. But we all learn from each other, and our board helps keep us accountable and has eyes where we don't have eyes, and reveals things that we need to continue to look at and include in our work. And so for that, we're very thankful to them. And I guess the next transition is just a little bit of a fun one. I have captured everybody's names, and we are going to do a little bit of a raffle. We are in the process of ordering some new swag with our new name and logo on it. We are ordering baseball caps and water bottles. So you can choose whichever one you want. But I'm going to share our little screen here, and we'll go ahead and do a few giveaways. So our first winner, Heather. Congratulations.
Well done, Heather. Way to bring the mojo to the open house. Are we raffling off a few, right?
We are raffling off a few. Yes. So Heather, can you let us know if you would like a water bottle or a baseball cap? And you might need to unmute. A hat? All right. Our next winner . Alexis.
Yay. That's so exciting. I would really love a hat.
Great. And we'll do one more just for fun. Yeah.
Big money, big money, big money.
David, did you want a hat or a water bottle? Oh, is she no longer on the call? Well, we can follow up with her. Let's do one more because I want to get people who are in the space. Oh, she won again.
Yeah.
That's a double win. All right, we'll do one more. Allison.
Allison's gonna get one anyway, so we should do one more. I think we need to do one more.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. I'm writing people's names down so that we don't forget to give them their gifts. And then the next thing we have on our agenda is really just an informal space for you all to interact with us and our board. If you have questions or thoughts, I know we do have a couple of prompts. Jesse, do you have the first question?
Yeah, I do. I have some questions, but I think before I put those in the chat and we have you can either respond to those questions in the chat or verbally to us. And we would very much welcome your input on a few of these items. It'll help us in the work we do as a network. But before we go there, I would love to just open the floor generally as if we were in an open house and you were in kind of our foyer, if we have one day. You know, let us know how this rebrand strikes you and how your work currently, you might be able to see alignment with your work and this new brand. And, you know, maybe anything that has arisen for you as the presentation has gone on. We would love to just kind of open the floor now and hear from you as you heard the presentation and saw the rebrand, what stood out and what seemed salient to you. Roy, yeah, go for it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Eby. I'm with Multnomah County's Water Quality Program, but I'm actually here also representing this collaboration that we call the Clean Rivers Coalition. Yep. And I'm Carrie Handley from City of Gresham is here as well. She's also on the steering committee. And you may know or not, but this is the Clean Rivers Coalition is a collaborative of watershed council, soil and water conservation municipalities, federal, state, local governments, to do public outreach work. And specifically, this next couple of years, we'll be doing pesticide reduction residential use. And I really love the work here that you've done. I just see so many different alignments for us being more of the public outreach side of things, involving partners, but then you're focusing on the river health and the science and some of these kind of on the ground type things. And I would love to continue to work with you in dialogue about how to get the word out about these things so that the community feels like they're part of the culture, you know, the regular people, like, you know, our friends and family and things like that. And so, yeah, I love it. We have a campaign that we're going to launch this fall, and it's going to be called Follow the Water, Connect the Drops. And the name itself is about inspiring a sense of curiosity about the river, which I just see so much alignment with what you're doing, you know, because, you know, the river health is like such an important part of our lives. And to be able to have people recognize that and to say, wow, I'm a part of that. And, you know, I have something to contribute to it with some of the partners that you're working with or just in your own home. And so I'm thrilled. And that name is just really connecting with me, is really vibing with me. Just all this equity work and discussion that we've had in the past several years, it just like it resonates really hard, and I'm just absolutely thrilled.
Roy, that's so helpful. I really appreciate that comment because it's almost like your campaign is strategically targeted at giving people in the region a sense of agency, that they have a role to play in the health of the river. And I wonder if there's always just been this sense, and I've talked to Willie Levinson at the Human Access Project about this, but this sense in Oregon that the river is something you just drive over, but it's not something you necessarily recreate in. This is currently obviously a strong sense in Multnomah County, where we don't have a lot of access points really to the river. So it's almost like people can just overlook it. You know, they're looking at buildings or the sky. So I love that your campaign is really going to be focused at culture change and getting people to kind of feel a sense of personal agency and responsibility. I think that's good for millennials too. Speaking as a millennial myself, we need that kind of outreach, I would say, from stakeholders to engage us. And because I think many of us aren't always engaged in clean river sort of work unless we were kind of formally trained in it or, you know, went to school for it or something. So it sounds like a great campaign, Roy. Thank you.
Yeah, right on.
Gladys Ruiz.
Hi everyone, it's great to see so many familiar faces on this this open house. Thanks so much, Tana and Jesse and board members, Michael and Naveen. I know he left, Clinton, and of course Keta. Yeah, I think for me, and I've connected with Tana more recently. You know, when I start to hear about like a culture change, and then the idea of engaging more people in clean rivers, it sounds similar to what we've been doing. And so I think for me, I'm really excited for the opportunity to start to engage with people where they are, whether it be at the shores, on the banks, or you know, up in areas that don't necessarily touch the Willamette directly. And I think that I'm just really excited to see more of those community-based organizations engaged on their you know, on their terms. And so how do we start to build authentic relationships with those groups? And so I'm just curious to hear what are some of the things that you have done along that line, in addition to kind of the rebranding and the logo. So that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, and I mean, thank you so much, Gladys. I feel like that's the genius of a network, right? Is there's kind of a parity of relationships across the network. There's no hierarchy. There's no one in control or domineering or dominating, but it's really about everyone kind of having a flat organizational structure and equal voice. And then Tana and I's role is really to elevate everyone's voice so that people can kind of hear each other. The amount of information can kind of percolate amongst everyone. And we can start to, and you know, obviously Gladys, this is your area of expertise in your organization as far as bridging the gap between communities of difference or communities who have been wedged against one another through political strategies that are unethical. And this sort of division in America results from political practices that we hope will fade. And we hope that new, more ethical ways of being and knitting communities together across difference will emerge in Oregon as new economic models and new environmental justice models also are emerging currently in the new administration. So thank you so much for your work and the way you continue to translate the values of the environmental community and make them relevant and discernible to communities who haven't always felt included in that. And that's really what we need to do in Oregon. We need to just bring people into the circle and not be exclusionary. So you do that really well, Gladys. And I'll also let Tana respond to that too. I'm sure Tana might have some thoughts, and then we'll go to Liz as well.
Gladys, I appreciate your question because I think a lot of it speaks to the need of building trust and getting to know communities and building relationship with them first. And I think Jesse and I have started doing some of that, but the Willamette Basin is huge. And so being able to do that just in the Portland metro area is a lot of work, but to continue to do that down in Woodburn and in Albany and Salem and Corvallis and Eugene and all of the other tiny little towns in between, it's going to take time. But I think, longer term, I would love to be able to pull together groups of community-based organizations and different communities of color to have conversations that are meaningful to them about how the river is impacting them, whether that's we're talking about health, whether we're talking about access, about safety, like what have you. But I think we're here to listen to what those concerns and issues are and give space and help lift it up.
Well said, well said. Liz.
Yeah, I'm Liz Perkin. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Northern Oregon Regional Coordinator for the Native Fish Society. We're kind of going through some big diversity, equity, and inclusion work in our organization right now. And one of my big goals working with the Willamette Basin is trying to move a little bit more in the urban environments. There's actually streams, in Portland that have been kind of neglected that I think, is being brought up here with water quality and things like that. But, bringing in some of those communities who have been excluded historically. If you look at the traditional supporters of the Native Fish Society and other fish-centric groups, there's a very a standard profile of the person who's typically involved with those organizations. And, I would love to work with all of you to help bring in some of those communities who have a lot to offer. And I think we have, some things to offer them and to help make this river a better place, help, rebuild maybe some of those connections to the fish and just break down some of those exclusion barriers and make sure that we're all working together for these interests that we all have. So I really look forward to this and thank you so much for putting this together and helping create this sort of environment.
We feel like it's a privilege and pleasure and big shoes to fill. I mean, the Willamette River Initiative accomplished so much over 10 years, and we're hoping to advance that work and broaden the boundaries of that work so that more and more communities are jumping in on what it means to advance water justice in Oregon, resilient forests, healthier communities. So, and we're hoping to do it in a way that affiliates people across the aisle, doing this in a bipartisan way so that we can be really effective.
Jesse, you had a couple of questions for folks.
Dude, there's such good banter here. It's excellent. Yes, so as Tana and I were talking at the open house kind of planning session, we thought, it'd be really nice if anyone wanted to respond to this question, which I will put in the chat now. You're welcome to respond to it in the chat, or you're welcome to kind of lift your voice here and talk about it. But as Tana and I are planning out the next 12 months, we would love to hear from you what some topics might be as a network that we all should be considering learning more about together. And this is really to raise the professional practice of those who are doing this work across the basin. So if you have topics, or the other question I could put in the chat as well that might be helpful to some of you is perhaps some particular speakers or thinkers that you think we should be inviting to speak to our network. So think on that and feel free to respond in the chat to any of those questions, or to raise your hand and we'll call on you. And Ken Beerley, his hand is raised, so I'm going to call on Ken. And Ken, you can feel free to respond to those questions or anything else you might have had on your mind. This is an open house. So.
Just a quick question. in the middle Willamette, we're looking at a highly altered system where villages that were previously occupied by indigenous people are now agriculture or have been even mined for aggregate removal. When we start to look at the possibility of restoration of these aggregate sites, and how do we engage well with the indigenous interests that are embedded in these lands? And it seems like some way to create those connections in a effective way could be a huge benefit that you could provide. And by the way, I love the new name and logo.
Oh, thank you, Ken. That's such a good question. It's out of my area of expertise, so I'll kind of leave that open. Any board members or Tana or anyone else on the call could feel free to chime in on responding to Ken there. That's such a great question.
It really blows to have a question and no answer.
Oh, Clinton's got an answer.
Well, I don't have an answer, but I have some reflections. And I think what you've posed, Ken, is multifaceted. I think some work that's happening and has been underway in the Upper Willamette, for example, has started to tease at some similar questions of how do we balance leaning into relationships while and not being transactional, but also valuing people's time and knowing that it's scarce. And those are often in conflict, perhaps, or a tension to be walked. And how do we balance the really high priorities that a sovereign nation has for the health of its people, and also centering in our work as conservation folks that there is a long history of these highly developed lands, and that there's a responsibility and an opportunity for, I guess, greater effectiveness of our work if tribes are involved. And so how do we fit in the priorities list? I mean, I'm just reflecting on things I think that we all know. And I think there are opportunities underway to work collaboratively with tribes to develop some tribal liaison positions to where, how can we as white-led, primarily nonprofit conservation organizations leverage the resources that we might have access to support tribal positions that would be sustained, and perhaps then be those liaisons to add capacity to engage on these topics and make sure that tribal priorities are represented. This is a nascent idea, and it's not certain that that's the right path forward. But I think you've touched on something really important in this question, which is how do we do that in a respectful and authentic way that kind of threads the needle on relationship building, but also, like, as you said, being effective, knowing that these sites, these habitats maybe can't wait for the pace of some of our conversations, but probably should. So I think there's just a lot of complexity there to unravel, but I'd love to talk with you more offline and maybe even see what the role could be for the network to help the network as it exists outside of Nesika Wilamut, the staff and the board grapple with that question.
Yeah, Ken, I appreciate your question too. I know Clinton's work with Long Tom has done extensive outreach and relationship building with local tribes, and so Clinton is a great resource in terms of how to make that happen in practice. We are actually in the process of creating an Indigenous Advisory Council to help guide us on some of these questions and how to best approach it directly with tribes. So stay tuned. We'll be sure to share who our folks are who are good resources on that. And I'm seeing a ton of questions in the chat. And so I did see a question on, Janice had a question about what outreach and education programs are you planning to engage the public in your efforts? And we do have some on our website. We're in the process of overhauling our website. I had mentioned right now we're currently working with an Indigenous photographer and videographer. His name is Paul Robert Wilson. And we've been reaching out to some of our partners to have them tell stories, to take photographs that are not stock photos of the Willamette at various stages of the year, up and down the river, and we're going to be infiltrating social media with stories about the river and people's connections to it. So that is one thing that we're planning to do. And then we are also, just in terms of education, we're looking at creating really effective ways of diversifying our workforce and finding ways to get young people of color into the environmental workspace, and working with employers in terms of how to create an equitable and safe working environment, but also how to effectively mentor and bring in young professionals into the field.
Yeah, and that work dovetails with Biden's recent directive to create a civilian climate corps. So that's really exciting. And we're currently working with our federal delegation here in Oregon to be well positioned to help advance some of those efforts as they begin in the state of Oregon. So one question on personhood of rivers. I'm aware that there are legal conversations beginning in Oregon with key legal leaders, environmental law leaders. At this stage, I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about it, but I do know that work is being explored. So that's very exciting. They've looked at one of the models with the Navajo Nation and the personhood of rivers, just to quickly answer that question. And this is happening in Oregon, so that's exciting. I also saw a very good comment in here about, so was a person reaching education programs. Oh yes, and I wasn't sure who could address this, but it seems that Jim Robeson has raised there's not enough attention on sturgeon right now in sturgeon populations. Does anyone want to respond to that? I think that's a great flag, Jim. And Liz Perkin also brings up that she would like to hear from more Indigenous speakers. Carrie Handley says we need to raise the collective IQ around tribal history. So we have been discussing that as an organization. How do we begin working with Oregon Parks and Rec, perhaps some muralists in Eugene and Salem? As part of the Anchor Habitat Working Group's accomplishments, they were honored with the Tees International River Prize in 2014. And some of those dollars they decided should be used to produce murals celebrating the health of the Willamette River and the work of the initiative. And so we're in our early stages of looking at using some of those Tees International River Prize dollars to publicly raise awareness around the history of the Willamette River. If that's a project that interests you, or you would be interested in talking with us and being involved in that, we would welcome your involvement. So feel free to reach out to us if that's something that interests you. But we agree that certainly we need to be hearing from and raising awareness on the Indigenous history of these lands.
I like all of the comments about the education and reaching out to K through 12. My past work in my career path was primarily in higher education, so I do have a lot of connections to higher ed, but also I have personal connections to folks who are working in K through 12. My spouse actually works for Beaverton School District and is the Indian Education Coordinator there, and so I can definitely see some overlap in making sure that when we are creating outreach work, that it is connected to benchmarks and the new standards and stuff for education. We also have an interesting time in Oregon's education where there are a lot of new bills that have been passed to include the histories and voices of different communities. I know Senate Bill 13 was passed recently to include the voices of Oregon's Indigenous tribes, but there have also been bills passed to include African American and Latino and Asian American voices as well. So it would be really cool if we can create some sort of education that's including those voices in it as well. And I see people are having to pop off. It is completely fine. I know we're running into people's lunch hours and meetings are coming and stuff, but we're just happy to have you here, and we'll continue to stay on until 1:30. So if you have things to add to the chat, or you want to just raise your hand and share comments, we are happy to have both options.
Yeah. Christopher.
Hi there. I really appreciate you doing this open house and getting acquainted with you, Jesse and Tana, and seeing some old friends. I'm one of those people who's no longer working with the old Willamette River Initiative or working with the organization, having left Friends of Beaufort Park in Mount Pisgah in 2019. But so I guess my comment would be regarding the opportunity for mentoring or information sharing. I mean, mentoring suggests, I know and they don't, or, a young person, but I'm really interested in this natural generational evolution of what we're trying to do, right? I think the rebranding and the increase in addressing equity concerns in our work is a bit of evolution, and there's learning that goes both ways. So I just want to say that I think the more we can identify people who want to seek careers in this field of river restoration to, get personal support from people who've been around and, well, this is how it was back in the day. Of course, it's not that way today. Today is today. And that's their challenge as, say, staff people for organizations or in agencies or whatever role they may be playing. But I just want to indicate that I know professionalization has always been an interest in increasing stability in the staffing, particularly in the leadership staffing, so that because we'd see such a revolving door of leadership sometime in key organizations that are not properly resourced with funding. So just that human connection of encouragement is very valuable, I think, for developing staff leaders, basically, I would see, and how to be, do this work in ways that are addressing the equity concerns as well as the scientific. And I think the only topic I would suggest is considering the tension between carrying capacity of the Willamette River, given the influx of population we are forecast to have and are experiencing, and how we can continue to make the world a better place for people living here, as well as the animals and plants and fish and the rivers. To do those at the same time is a challenge, and there's a tension there. So get it out on the table. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, very well said, Chris. And your insights resonate with the recent state economist in Oregon saying that number one objective to increase economic health in the state is to generate jobs for 18 to 26-year-olds in the environmental space. And this could resonate with some dollars that will come down from the feds for the Civilian Climate Corps work. We are partnering with the Northwest Youth Corps and some others, but I agree, they do have a mentoring component with the Northwest Youth Corps, and there are other organizations that are doing that sort of mentoring component. But this is kind of the legacy period for the baby boomers who hold 80% of American wealth. And in so doing, they hold a disproportionate amount of power. And they have a moral opportunity to respond to the current power they have and to use it in such a way that advances justice. And so we're excited to figure out how to bridge the generational divides, because we often find that millennials or Generation Z, which are younger than us, are not really connected so much with older generations, and sometimes older generations are not very well connected with the younger generations. And that's kind of a unique thing to John Lockean liberal individualism, whereas more of an indigenous worldview and a worldview that kind of comes from the majority world would always have this strong connection of kinship between older and younger generations. And so perhaps also as part of our rebrand and wanting to center traditional ecological knowledge in the work we're doing, part of that, I think, Christopher, that you're bringing up is knitting people together across generations too. You know, it's not just knitting people together across racial lines, though it certainly is. It's also knitting people together across the ages. And if we can do that in Oregon and do it better than any other state in the US, I think we'll be very well positioned to achieve some measurable and kind of exemplary outcomes. So that's what we're aiming for. And Chris, I would welcome a meeting with you to discuss that more. I know Tana would as well. So.
Yeah, I think that intergenerational dimension of our work is extremely important.
Extremely.
Both for the professional capacity, you know, lessons going down, but also lessons coming up. I mean, up from the younger people. And it's just a dynamic that can be very energizing for all concerned.
We're all connected. We're all a family. You know, we're all in this together. We all have one Oregon that we got to take care of. So let's figure out how to take care of it together. We can do more together than we can apart. Roy, you got your hand up, Roy.
Yeah, I do. I had, I guess, one comment and then one question. Just quickly, the comment was about that River Starts Here student video contest that Carrie posted in the chat. Carrie's been the project lead on that. It's been super successful. Last year, we had about 40 entries. We had 11,000 individual views from 4,000 people with these videos. And we had it, the videos in the Eco Film Fest. And it's like the power of the storytelling, it just like was telling me that, like, was so compelling when like young people have to say this stuff as opposed to older people. And it's like, I think that perspective is so rich, and thinking about some of the discussion that you had earlier about, you know, young voices and tribal voices and things, like it just seems like that is such an important like piece, in that voice itself is like so rich. And but the comment, I guess, or the question I had for the network is, so like there's that the framework that you provided, and there's all these priorities for this, all these people doing all this work, and I'm trying to think of like the role of the network itself. Like, is it as a coordinating body or as an organization that does things? You know, obviously you have the conference and things, but like there just seems like so many demands here for like so much stuff to do to advance the science, advance the culture, and, you know, share the voices, unify the voices. Do you see certain priorities within like this next window of time, thinking like, okay, so we get this together, we start selling the brand, that this is what we do, so that when you know, the people approach and say, what does Nesika Wilamut, you know, what do you do? Is there something tangible, or is it more something else? I guess
it's very tangible, I think. I can go first on that, but I'd love to hear Tana respond to it too. But essentially, if we convene partners to collaborate and talk, and we build that synaptic connection between partners, and the other strategy we're taking to build the network is to build out an internship program, which I'll let Tana talk about. So we want to convene partners. We want to do workforce development by building an internship program that adds value to our partners. And the third charter purpose, and we have a fourth one that's a little bit smaller, but the third one is we need to bring new funding into the basin for all of our partners. That's one of our primary chartered tasks. So Tana and I are constantly working to write out grants or pursue funding opportunities that will unlock sustainable streams of funding for basin partners. It could look like us being a re-granting organization. It could also look like us just helping match organizations in the basin with other either philanthropic opportunities or federal investment opportunities. We're working closely with Willamette Partnership on their water investment ready research, and really hoping that we can partner with them in amplifying this information to partners or coordinating partners we know that are working on similar things. But the fourth small purpose for the reason why we exist is to be a hub for information and learning. And we're going to be doing that via our website, our social media channels, and engaging with primarily kind of the youth, but it will also be kind of taking the good intellectual and academic environmental research, whether ecological research or environmental law research, and making it a little bit more publicly accessible to the basin and to those who come to our website. There is some cool opportunities brewing with USGS on particularly a water observation system that Oregon might be getting soon, which would be wonderful. We don't know if that's going to happen, but we're kind of hoping for that and pushing on that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities coming down where we're hoping to kind of raise, like you are and like Willie is, we also are hoping to raise awareness to the public about traditional ecological knowledge and advancing a healthier Willamette River system by centering tribal voices and communities of color in the work. So, but yeah, I would say convening is one of our primaries and fundraising. That's probably 1, 2, and then number 3 would be the internship program, and 4 would be the hub. So, but Tana, what else did I miss there, or what else would you add to that?
I think you did a really good job summing it up, Jesse, just in terms of like, as a network, our primary purpose is to make sure people are connecting with one another, but we're also following like what people are saying are the topics that are of interest, right? And the things that people are caring about right now. We know diversifying the workforce is one of those things that people really get excited about. And like, yes, we need new, fresh people to bring into the field. And we want them to be diverse. We want them to be successful. So that's one of the areas where we're going to put some of our energy. But we also, we know that funding is another big thing. So we're devoting a lot of our energy to those things. But then we do want to be a place where people can go to our media sites and use it for information and share out information for, you know, like I'm longer term for our communications and stuff. I'm wanting to connect with partners to write blogs and give opportunities to lift up your work and get it out to a larger, broader audience. You know, so yeah, we've got a lot of things in the works, but it's exciting because we're at the beginning, and so you know, we're not set to any specific structure at this point. Like we can go where the network is saying this is where the energy is.
Yeah,
right on. That's helpful.
One thing I might add to that, you know, we're in a digital environment right now, you know, where we're over Zoom, but the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network, which is kind of our regional hub in the Eugene area, has an office space, and they have kind of an affiliate of people that meet formally and informally up there to coordinate actions. And there will be times when I or Tana will be officing out of the Upper Willamette sort of area, and just kind of supporting what they're doing with funding and with amplifying the information that's coming out from that region. And this is also happening, you may know, in Corvallis at the Confluence Center building, which is currently under construction. So I wonder if there's an opportunity in the coming 5 years for just kind of these small like coalitions of environmental justice groups focused on healthier forests, healthier rivers, healthier people. I wonder if there's kind of these locales that will emerge, you know, in the Eugene area, in Corvallis, in Salem, Albany, near Willamette Falls, in the Portland Harbor, you know, and these will actually be physical locations where people can informally meet one another and cross-fertilize conversations, you know, and kind of advance their own practice and awareness.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, this is really helpful.
Oh, sorry. I second everything that's been said, and I think your question, Roy, is sort of the question in many ways for the network. And I think the answer is yes, right? Like you kind of, it's not either or, and it's what does the network need to be at any given time and in any given space? And I think a lot of Adrienne Marie Brown emergent strategy, sort of like, what are the ingredients? How do we have the right folks together with the right set of intentions and alignment to be responsive and adaptive? And in some cases, it's going to look like, yes, let me support and endorse what's going on here. In other places, it's going to be no one node in the basin can do this thing. And so how does the infrastructure of the network as a coordinating body then carry that and do going forward? And so I really see it as a both and that's really the special secret sauce of the network in many ways, particularly the coordinating body of the network, is that it can manage those niches and put energy where it's needed and stay out of the way where it's needed, and let those resilient sort of organic things that are happening either regionally or across regions, just be supported. So it's an awesome question, and it really is, I think, at the central, the central nucleus of what we're grappling with.
Yeah, right on. This helps me be able to describe what this is as I sell this and tell people that this is important, and they're going to ask, why is it important? Now I can say why it's important. I know, like in the Portland area, we had the Intertwine Alliance, which was this network of kind of natural resources, parks, folks. And after like several years, like people were like, I was like, what is the Intertwine? And they're like, I don't really know. I'm like, why is it important? And they're like, I don't know. They just do these gatherings sometimes. I'm like, what's the point? And they're like, I don't know. And so I think like for the longest time, like, and maybe even now, people don't know, like, why does it exist? Like, what's the point? And so like, it's like, yeah, it's like when I hear you say it like that, it's like, right on. Okay, there's the convenings, there's the internships, the funding, there's the hub. Like, okay, yes, solid. I can do it.
Well, we are almost at 12:30, but I don't know if there were any last comments or things that people wanted to share out before we wrap up.
Thank you all for your presence here today with us. It means so much.
Yeah, we'll be sharing. This is being recorded, so we will share this out on our website, as well as we'll have a link that'll go out in our newsletter, as well as a short synopsis. So if you don't have the whole hour and a half to rewatch it, you can share it out with folks who might want to know more about Nesika Wilamut. We're excited to finally have the name shared out publicly, and we'll be working on getting everything official. So our emails and website and everything will connect to that as well.
Very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was good to see all of your faces. Someday soon, hopefully we'll be able to do this all in person.
Float on the river. Float on the river.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
It's nice to meet you, Tana and Jesse and Clinton. Clinton, you and I have emailed a few times.
Yeah, we should rejuvenate that.
Thank you for your work.
No, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Keta.
Thank you.
Thank you.